Good morning, my internet family. So this is going to be a quick video. Happy Monday. I'm reading in 1 Samuel right now, and today I read 1 Samuel 13. And this is where Saul had already defeated King Nahash, I believe it was. Yes, King Nahash. And then he went and got crowned as king after that, after winning that battle. And a little backstory, the Israelites had decided they wanted a king, even though God had always taken care of them. They had had Samuel ruling over them since Samuel had been a child, just as a priest, taking care of them on behalf of God, and God always winning the victory one way or another for them. But when they came up against King Nahash, what happened was they had a king and his army that was coming against them, and they decided that they wanted a king as well, a king and an army. And so basically what they wanted, instead of this God that they had, the God that they had that was so much bigger than anyone they had ever faced before and would always remain that way, they decided that they needed to match the enemy. They needed to look like the enemy. They needed to have the same things as the enemy that was coming against them. And that put me in mind of us. We do the same thing. Things that we compete with, people that we compete with, which we're not supposed to do in the first place. But we see these things and they don't, there's friction in them and us. And then we decide that we need to be just like them in order to fight them. And that's not how it works. That actually doesn't even make any sense, because our God is so much bigger. Our God is better. Our God is stronger. Our God is bigger. Our God is wiser. And yet we still think that we need to be equal to the thing that we're up against in order to fight it, because we want to fight in our own strength, which makes no sense. So going on into 1 Samuel 13, we see God honoring their wish for a king. He gave them Saul, who, it breaks my heart reading about how humble and how honorable he was at the beginning, knowing how he turns out later. But that's a whole nother thing. And the people are so happy to have this king, and they're ready to serve under him. And Samuel, he's old, and he's basically getting ready to retire, and he's telling them how them wanting a king was sinful. And that, he's discussing it. He's going against it. He's coming against them, talking about all these things that God had done for them, and how, have you got anything against me? What have I done wrong to you in my time serving you as a leader? And no one had anything for him. So he told them that he was going to come to God. He was going to pray to God for proof, which was going to be rain after the rain season, when there shouldn't have been rain, that they had sinned. And when God brought the rain, the people just basically started condemning themselves like we do now. They started mourning, they started repenting. Oh, what have we done, basically? And that's like what we do. We know what we're doing is wrong. We're told by everyone around us. We know that what we're doing is not God's will for us, and yet we do it anyway. And then when we see evidence of that, we're like, oh, I didn't know. Please forgive me. Something we all do, I'm sure. And then here's the part that really stuck out to me. Samuel tells them, God's not going to leave you. What you did was wrong, but God's still not going to leave you. You're still his chosen people. So you made a bad choice. You made the wrong choice, and now you're going to have to be stuck living in it. But that doesn't mean that God is going to abandon you. So long as you stay with God, so long as you don't worship other gods and turn from God, then God is not going to leave you, even in this sin, even in living in the consequences of this choice that you made that went against God. And this spoke to my heart so much, because let's face it, not a single one of us goes a single day without having at least one moment where we do something that is against God. We do something that does not speak of his character, that does not speak of who he says we are, what he calls us to do, something that is not righteous. We all do something every single day. We make choices that lead us away from the will of God for our lives. We treat people, we treat ourselves, we think things, we do things, whatever it may be, that don't line up with God's heart and with his will for us. But does this mean that he abandons us? He still chose us. If you're sitting here listening to me and you have a relationship with God, or, if you exist, period, God chose you, and you have a purpose that he created you for. He didn't create that purpose after you were born. He designed you specifically and uniquely for that purpose. So we belong to him, and he gave us free will. So when we make stupid choices, when we don't think things through, when we don't listen to the wise counsel around us, when we go off on our own ways, God doesn't leave us. What he does, and this is just like a parent with a child. So good parenting is stressful because there's a lot of time spent sitting back watching to make sure that our children don't hurt themselves while they learn the lesson the hard way. Because telling a child something is not the same as letting them learn themselves in life, through mistakes, in action, through consequences. So there's a lot of time spent watching, just, are they going to hurt themselves? Here I am if they do. And letting them learn the hard way. And that's what God was doing for the Israelites. He had enough of them asking for other things, of trying to wander away. He said, okay, fine, you can have your way. You can have your way. I'm not going to abandon you. I just need you to learn for yourself. I need you to be proven that you were wrong and that I was right. That way you can trust me wholly. Because even though we ought to know, and we do in our minds, that we can trust God wholly, we still need evidence, because we're human, and we need tangible things, even though we know better. So what he was doing was he was allowing them to learn the hard way, and he was sitting back watching and just waiting patiently for them to see that they had been wrong and to turn around and come back to him. And this is so beautiful to me, because, I struggle with stuff just like everyone else does. And knowing that even in the middle of making the wrong choice, even in the middle of, knowing I heard God say something and then winding up over here anyway, or, just whatever it may be that I'm not in perfect alignment with God's heart on. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I have this tendency to condemn myself, and I don't ever think God's not going to love me now. But that's the kind of posture that my heart adopts, and that's not the case. That's never the case. He never leaves us. He never gives us away. He never unadopts us. We're always his, and his heart never changes for us. He just lets us learn the lesson the hard way, just like he did the Israelites. He lets us deal with our own consequences so that we can see, truly know from experience, because there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is lived experience applied with the knowledge applied to it. So there's a difference between knowing that he's good, knowing that he's right, and then being wise enough to truly understand that from the experiences of our life, along with that knowledge of that beforehand. So when we make mistakes, when we make the wrong choices, when we sin, when we falter, when we feel defeated, whatever it may be, he just lets us on our own figure out, that the world is wrong. The world is always going to be wrong, because the world doesn't line up with God. It's upside down. It's not God's concepts that are upside down. It's the world's. And he lets us figure that out on our own. He lets us see how that doesn't fit. And he lets us make the decision to trust him all over again, this time wholeheartedly. This time because we know in our hearts from experience that he's the only trustworthy one. That he is the King of Kings. That he is the Lord of our life. And that he is in control. You guys have a fantastic week, and I love you all.